This is chapter 12, Smoking Bridge. Come on, Eppie. Eppie, come on. You can sit down. Hello, I'm Rosie Boom, and we're here at Riverwood Cabin, and I'm reading to you from Where Lions Roar at Night, the fun and adventures of a pioneering New Zealand family. Written by me, Rosie Boom. And this is chapter 12, Smoking Bridge. Morning dawned clear and still on the Oregon Trail. As soon as Sam and Jake woke up and remembered where they were, they scrambled out of bed and went exploring. By the time Mum emerged from the wagon, they'd gathered enough firewood for cooking breakfast and had found some great hideouts amongst the pines. The valley lay below them like a sparkling jewel. Morning mists still clung to the bottom of the hills and looked like lacy petticoats spilling out from beneath long green velvet dresses. A big cooked breakfast is essential when you're travelling long miles, said Mum, as she cracked some eggs into the pan where the bacon already sizzled. Jake's tummy rumbled hungrily. When they couldn't eat any more, they all set the dirty dishes in a bucket and then put some hot water on to boil. Mum looked over at the volcanic rock pile. Why don't we have a game of David and Goliath while we wait for the water to heat? The boys shot off and began gathering a pile of small rocks. As soon as they'd collected enough, they picked out a large flat rock and balanced a medium-sized stone on top, Goliath's head. Mum stepped out 12 paces and laid some sticks on the ground for a line. They took turns throwing rocks at Goliath's head. Jacob went first since he was the youngest. It was harder than it looked. They'd each had about 3 goes before Jacob let fly the rock that toppled the stone. Mum and Sam clapped and cheered as little David took a deep bow. After quite a few games, they went back to the campsite and the boys washed the dishes while Mum caught Seth and put his harness on. We'd better head down quite early, she told the boys, because Dad just texted to say that Uncle Brian is arriving this afternoon. Auntie Penny is coming back up to drive us down. The trip down the mountain proved to be a lot more difficult and stressful than the one up. The wagon had no working brake and began to push hard against Seth as he walked down the steepest part of the track. He began to slip and slide on the red volcanic soil and got faster and faster. Auntie Penny tried to rein him in, and his haunches sunk low and he set back into the breeching. The wooden shafts shot forward and Seth strained to hold the weight behind him. Mum and Auntie Penny both looked tense. "Hop off the wagon, boys," said Mum, "and stay clear of the wheels." Sam and Jake ran beside the track and watched as Seth struggled to stop the wagon running away with him. The muscles strained across his broad back and his back legs slid right under his belly. They finally reached the flat. Auntie Penny pulled on the reins and said, "Whoa, Seth," as she jumped down from the seat. Her face looked pale. Seth stood quietly, his breath coming in deep grunts, his nostrils flaring. His neck and sides were drenched with sweat, and his flanks were flecked with foam. Mum leaned against him and stroked his lathered neck. "Good boy," she whispered, "good boy." When they reached the barn, the boys ran to find Dad and tell him all about their adventure. He chuckled when he heard about the lions. "Well, what a night! I don't suppose you saw any Indians?" The boys grinned and ran off to find their bows and arrows. Mum sat down and had a hot drink while she told Chris all about the dramas of their return trip. "I'll be happy to leave the Oregon Trail for a while and settle right here in the valley." "Well, I'm glad to hear that," laughed Dad. "It was pretty lonely down here." For the next 3 days, it looked as if the Indians had attacked the settlers in the valley. Huge bonfires raged in 6 different places on the land, and sparks danced in the night sky. Uncle Brian had offered to deal with the wood piles and logs that littered the land, and for 3 days he had worked a large digger, rolling everything into huge piles before setting them alight. One massive gum log lay near the gully by Black Rabbit Island, and Mum decided it would make a beautiful bridge. Uncle Brian tied a heavy chain around one end, hooked it to the digger, and began to pull. With a groan, it shook off the grass that grew over it and slowly slid towards the gully like a giant alligator. But when it was 3/4 of the way across, the chain snapped with the strain and flew through the air. Dad reattached it and Uncle Brian tried again, but the log refused to budge and the chain broke again. After the 3rd unsuccessful attempt, Dad decreed that the log would stay where it was. Mum looked disappointed. "But we're so close." Then she glanced over at the fire that was blazing in the middle of the island. "Brian, do you think you could drag out that burning log off the fire and join it up with the gum log? I think if we put them end to end, they would span the gully." Minutes later, the smoking log was positioned at the end of the gum. It fitted perfectly. Mum clapped her hands with excitement. "I'm christening it Smoking Bridge." Then she sloshed a few buckets of water on the hot end. "We'll have to make sure we wear gumboots if we're crossing over to Black Rabbit Island in the next few days." It made a splendid bridge. The centre of it was flat and broad, and Dad cut a step into one end with his chainsaw. "It'll take a pretty serious flood to wash this giant away," he said. Then he looked up at the tall tree beside the log and told Sam to run and get the roll of rope in his workshop. Half an hour later, the tree sported a long rope swing. Sam and Jake jumped around on the log, begging for the first turn. "No," said Dad. "I think I'd better try it out first. This old rope is a bit dodgy." He stood on the middle of the log and then with a big push swung out across the gully. He leaned right back and swung his feet up in the air as the swing rushed back towards the log. "Me next," shouted Jake. But Dad wasn't ready to get off. He pushed off from the bridge again with a loud yahoo. Suddenly the rope snapped and dumped Dad right on the ground with a loud thump. "Are you all right?" called Mum in a worried voice. She needn't have worried. Dad was fine, other than a bruised behind and a bruised ego. "Well," he muttered, rubbing his back, "serves me right for using that old rope. Let's try again." This time, he carefully inspected a new piece of rope before lassoing the branch and tying the knot. "Let Dad do the heffalump test first," Mum said with a wink to the boys. They were more than happy for Dad to do the test swing this time and waited patiently their turn on the log. "We used to have a huge rope swing over the gully behind our house in New Guinea," said Mum as she watched Dad test the new rope. "We did all sorts of tricks on it, hanging upside down to pick something up from the bottom of the gully as we swung past. 2 of us on it together, swinging the rope and then leaping onto it as it came back to the bank. But I shouldn't really be giving you ideas. I'm sure you'll invent plenty of dangerous ones yourselves without my input. I can't wait to show Millie, said Sam. She'll think it's awesome. You boys miss her when she's away, don't you? Sam nodded. She can be pretty bossy sometimes, though, said Jacob. Mum laughed. Yes, she can, but she certainly gets things happening. I remember when she went to stay with Nana one time. You boys missed her like anything. Finally, I told you to ring her. When you told her you were bored, I could hear her voice right through the phone as she began to organise you. Right, first go and jump on the tramp for a while. Then get your Lego out and make a truck. Then play pirates. She had you sorted out in a jiffy. Sam and Jake grinned at each other. They both thought Millie was a pretty cool sister, even if she was bossy. They'd have a lot of fun on the swing when she got home. Dad swung back and made a skillful landing on the broad part of the log. Why don't you let Mum have a go first, boys, since she's such a pro? Okay then, said Mum. Watch and learn, boys. She took the rope swing up to the end of the log and launched off. Dad positioned himself and gave her a huge push each time she came back. Higher and higher it went, and Mum shouted, I feel like a kid again. She hung her head back and watched the sky. Then Dad spun her, and Mum very quickly pulled herself upright. Loose brain, she cried. Sam and Jake laughed. Mum got hopelessly dizzy whenever Mum spun her. Stop, stop, Chris, laughed Mum. I'll fall off. The swing spun around and around, and Mum clung onto it like a monkey as it slowly lost speed. Finally, Dad caught hold of the rope and pulled it over to the log. Mum jumped off and clutched onto Dad's arm as she staggered. Oh, I'm so dizzy. I must have a loose brain. She stood for a while holding on to Dad. That was so cool. An easy way to peel off 40 years. But next time, I'll go on it when you're not around. And she gave Dad a quick push and tipped him off the log. That night, everyone went outside to watch the fires burn and to have baked potatoes. Mum and Sam had wrapped up potatoes in tin foil and put them in hot embers of the fire that burned on Black Rabbit Island. It was fun walking across Smoking Bridge in the dark. But when they dug out the potatoes and opened them up, they were black and withered up. Bother, said Mum. Dad turned to Uncle Brian with a wink. When I first got married, I had quite a job breaking in the new cook. 20 years on and she still burns the dinner. Mum pulled a face at him and tossed the burnt offerings back into the fire.